Thanks, Therese. Turn this off. Hello, are we there? Can you hear me? Okay. Hello? Okay, loud and clear. Oh, by the way, happy Cinco de Mayo. That doesn't mean you can drink tequila and beer and eat as many tacos as you can. I think it's celebration that the Mexicans overthrew the French government. I think at a certain time it was a Maximilian. For you history buffs out there. My name is Jeff, once again, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. We all showed up here to share a message of unity. And I get the honor and privilege of introducing this month's power, ability, and theme. Our ability and power, of course, is power. And the theme is only one power. You know, when you say the power is power, it tends to be a little redundant. So we try to use the word that works with that word power is dominion and mastery. So this is the kind of terminology we're working with in Unity, as opposed to just power. Although we have to acknowledge power, but in Unity we acknowledge it in a positive sense, in a positive frame of mind. And this is, primarily a lot of our work in terms of working along our spiritual path. You have the constant struggle between our carnal mind, material mind, our ego personality, which is more concerned with lower level consciousness in terms of the use of power, which can be very abusive, as opposed to a power that is innate within us as we rise toward and evolve toward our divine identity, where we're using divine power in all our affairs and in our day-to-day lives, trying to be, as some Unity writers talk about, being the best Christ or best person we can be. And that's not an easy task. We know how it is, being spiritual beings having a human experience. We're challenged by what some people call adversary, or the devil, or Satan, or whatever metaphysical context you want to put in for something that blocks or impedes our progress towards a better Christ identity. So the theme of only one power. You use that word only, but it sounds kind of restrictive, doesn't it? It's like only. It's like there was the Maranatha, the Jesus freak movements back in the early 70s, and it's just only one way. And it was almost totally didactic and almost totalitarian in terms of their Christian ideology. One way, only one way. But I think a lot of people misinterpreted that, and it created kind of a lot of negativity towards people who really actually did believe that there was one way to a higher spiritual evolved self and being Christ-like. That was through being Christ-like and exemplifying the model that Charles Fillmore, founder of Unity, expressed as the regenerated perfect man. We all have this ability to regenerate ourselves, become anew, that idea of being born again. But going back to the power struggle of our material mind and working towards our divine identity, our divine mind, the power that it takes. Because when we use divine power in positive ways, we create incredible things. Instead of, I heard the term, instead of being a monster, you can become a miracle. When you're in a lower consciousness state of mind of using your power, you can become very abusive and be a monster, as I said before. Or when we're aligned with Spirit and God, we can create miracles. It's, Jesus even said that these things I did, you can do much more and greater. And that really sets out quite a challenge for us as followers of unity. I ran across an interesting little article here. It was left anonymous, but I think we can all agree in terms of the unanimity of the message. Um, um, this individual said this about there is only one power and one presence in the universe in my life, God, the good, omnipotent. This is also expressed as God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere. And the author goes on to say, it's important to me to remember that there is one power, God, not the job market, uh, as I seek next right livelihood, not the stock market or the economy, as I wonder if my money is safe for retirement, not common sense, as I wish I and others in my life would not make bad decisions, not add or getting older or any of the things that I could blame actions on in my life, not the devil in whom my mother had a great belief, not Republicans, nor Democrats, nor any seeming devil in whom, or any seeming political force. Oh, and I do invest a lot of energy into believing that politics is a force in the world. There is one presence and one power in the universe and in my life. And luckily, too, it's not my ego, it's God. And I remember hearing that axiom for God. If some people, when you start talking about God, the way they're conditioned and the environment they brought up into, maybe they reject that idea of God. Maybe an agnostic that knows there's something out there, but they don't exactly call it God, or an atheist who just completely believes in nothing. But God is, I've heard used the axiom of what it means is God, good orderly direction. So we can look at the word God and think, well, okay, I need some order and direction in my life, and it has to be good. At least I believe that I'm innately good, and I want to embrace that in my life. So good orderly direction seems to be okay for another word for God, if that works for you or other people. Um, but it rises above the ego personality in terms of, there's a God and it's not me. There's a great pamphlet written by Emmett Fox, The Golden Key. Oh yeah, I think we looked at that here a while back. It's really a wonderful little book in which it says that whenever anything troubles you, rather than ruminating on your worry, think instead of God. So it'll take you, I'm talking about those daily challenges, in terms of our carnal mind, our material mind, and our divine mind. He suggests to drop that, and as we do in Unity through prayer and meditation, we get recentered with ourselves and our divine selves, and we connect with our higher powers, and people like to call it, or God. And he continues on to say, this principle helps in that pursuit because when I worry about my next job, when I worry about what my next job will be, or about the health and well-being of those I love, or the direction in which our country seems to be headed, even just losing a few pounds that found me over the holidays, I can remember that the real power is with God. Some people I hang out with say that if God seems a scary or foreign word to you, you can attribute to God, as I said, good orderly direction. And for this principle, I think you could substitute one of God's longer names, good. Add an extra O to God. It's good. It concludes with, I also like the last word we use for this principle at my church, omnipotent. When the things feel insurmountable, I can remember that all powerfulness of the good of God. That helped me a lot last year as my 46-year-old friend was dying from cancer. When I felt overwhelmed with sadness and wanting to stop what was happening, I turned the whole mess over to God, to the good omnipotent. Becky still died, but she was definitely at peace, and over time, I become at peace with it too. While God's idea of good, or what the ultimate plan is, still remains mysterious to me at times, I've come very much, I've come very much to trust the process. And I think that's an important aspect, is that trust and having in your faith that everything works out to the goodness of God and for your highest good. Although in slogging through our day-to-day challenges and travails as we perceive them to be, we know that ultimately that things will turn out just fine, something more than we could even imagine. In fact, we can even call them miracles, if that's how we want to look at it. So when I find myself troubled, I can turn to this principle and remind myself that thankfully, neither my ego nor fill the blank in with the supposed power about which you're worried about, economy, health, and etc., is anything else. Just over to you, God. It's that let go and let God principle that we talk about here in Unity. Um, it it's challenging, it's hard work, but anything worth doing has its value. You know, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? But it takes work on my part, and hopefully through coming in line with divine mind and my divine identity, that I can exemplify that to my fellow human beings, and I can express that in terms of what I say, what I do, let that be a manifestation of my Christ identity. And when that happens, things seem to just kind of like flow along. You know, you're in what they call in sports or other activities where you're kind of in the zone when you're connected to your higher source, when you're connected to God. Nothing, you know, just move along with the flow, and really a peaceful, as like Eagle song, peaceful, easy feeling. Um, you know, you're with the flow, the divine flow. And it makes life, not that life should be tolerable or something that we endure, because that's we're dropping into the ego personality mind, but something that should be celebrated, enjoyed, and cherished and appreciated, and be so grateful for the fact that, you know, from my first breath to my last breath, I at least had the consciousness to be aware that I'm more than this body, that I am a spirit, and I am going to eventually, you know, connect with the higher spirit some way, somehow. You know, it's like you look at me and I'm a work in progress. I look at other people and they're work in progress. We're all works in progress. As the saying goes, we're not spiritually perfect, but we are working towards progressing towards that ideal of what our divine inheritance is and should be. We just have to do the work. I've been reading a lot of Linda Martello Wislet, Divine Audacity. She really is a nice reinterpretation of the 12 Powers by Charles Fillmore. But within this, the discussion of power in her book, I came across really an interesting quote from Unity leader Eric Butterworth. I don't know if you're familiar with Eric Butterworth, but he was an early Unity teacher and leader in the Unity movement. I think I got the idea of he gave me the idea of living in our human spacesuits. So it's like, you know, that's what we have. These are our human spacesuits, our body temple, and we don't know what the expiration dates are or what we can do to repair them, but that's what we have. You know, we get checked in with our spacesuits, and we have to work with that. You know, but I love Eric Butterworth. What he's talking about here is that the obstacles and the impediments that our carnal material mind builds in us to keeps us from connecting with our higher source and our higher Christ identity. And he wrote, this is Eric Butterworth speaking, we also hold fixed false attitudes about ourselves. I am weak, not as smart, as worthless, unlovable, incapable. quote, to be created in the image of God means that in the beginning, in principle, you were formed as an idea in infinite mind. You can never be less than the God idea in expression. You do not need a new self-image. What you need is to let go of the graven image of yourself that you have carved into the fabric of your subconscious mind, and to know and release your own divine image. And that's from Butterworth's Breaking the Ten Commandments. When he talks about the craven image, craven uh, is interpreted as carving, carve in the Hebrew definition of the word craven, graven. So what it is when you grave an image in your own mind, it's that negative self-talk that we tell ourselves. You'll never do this, you can't do that, or we let what other people say to us in a negative context. It kind of seeps into our subconscious, and we operate it out of that unconsciously, and it affects our outcomes in huge ways sometimes. So it's the idea of coming into the consciousness, a higher consciousness, that we can lift ourselves out of that, internal prison. We have the keys to the lock that chains our minds, that we can actually open it up and experience the freedom and the release and being connected to God, and have that pure connection that we're all meant to be because of our divine inheritance. So the only one power. You can do a historical study in terms of how, from the caves, the early days, the dawning of conscious human beings. There's a lot of theories out there in terms of when humans became sentient conscious beings, from the fires in the caves, and, these prehistoric caves that are in Spain. I believe there's paintings on the walls of elephants and animals and actual handprints. So it was interesting to me that humankind wanted to leave some sort of image or impression that let them know that, yes, we were here. This is what we experienced. They kind of left a record. We find archaeological markings and drawings here in this continent. But to me, it's fascinating that even in all over the world, there have been systems of understanding power, and the early mankind, humankind, however you want to term it, they had, like the ancient Greece they had a pantheon of gods. They had a god for this, a god for that. You go and make your offerings to this other god, and this is known as pantheism. And it wasn't, in my understanding is that it wasn't until, Abraham, the father of the monotheistic idea of the one God. Well, he wasn't the only one. There was other cultures and civilizations in prehistory, like the pre-Columbian times. The Aztecs believed in the one God, but their God was the sun. Same as the Egyptians kind of eventually evolved into taking all their other different gods and came into the association of one God, of Ra. And so there was an evolution in the concepts of, who has the power. Only one power, only one power. And this was kind of a unifying dynamic that happened in the evolution of humankind's spirituality. We, in the Judaic Christian tradition, of course, we discovered that, through the leadership of Moses, we got a certain amount of a guidebook from the God of, of the Hebrews at the time, the Ten Commandments, and then later on through the hereditary lineage of David, what comes forth is the mission of Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus, the man who embodied the Christ principle. and which we in Unity tend to want to model as our way shower. But it's interesting the fact that this has been an evolutionary process, this dawning and ongoing um, growth of our spiritual consciousness. I like what Charles Fillmore had to say about consciousness. I mean, we working, challenging with our carnal mind all the time, but in terms of our consciousness, we need to connect with God, the God of our understanding, is that our consciousness needs to become spiritualized consciousness. And that really is the deciding difference between ordinarily, being aware of things and then being a conscious being. Oh, it's light outside, as opposed to the wonderment and amazement and being thankful for God, you made this wonderful day, this wonderful light. You see beyond the obvious. It's that invisible something that we try to make tangible, but at the same time, there's more to it than we'll ever understand. But that's what keeps us moving forward along our spiritual path. It's our quest for knowing our spiritual self, our true identity. What am I doing here? Marianne Winslet, or Linda Martell Winslet, divides the aspect of power into three categories. One is concentration, self-mastery, and the last one was, what was it? I can't remember. Spiritual authority. And that's a good way to look at it. It's like in concentration, this whole idea of multitasking, says I'm a multitasker. Well, it's impossible. Nobody can multitask because all that does is it diffuses your energy from this to that, and you can't really fully function multitasking. Whereas when you focus on one thing, it's like a laser, taking concentrated light like a laser, and you're focused on that one thing, and you take that to completion. And so it's like when you meditate or pray, you're concentrating on your connection to the divine within yourself, and therefore with, as within, so without. It takes focus, concentration. And the self-mastery is what I've been talking about, is that you control those passions, those lower passions, of hate and anger and envy and impatience. And it's like you have dominion over your own emotions that can create negative situations or results or consequences or unintended consequences as well. It's just that you're not being conscious of your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So self-mastery is that aspect of our divine identity that we know when to speak and when not to speak. It's not that you let things roll over you or let a sleeping dog lie, as they say in certain parts of the country. But you have that innate wisdom and self-mastery to know when you should speak up and not let what's going on, manifest, and then depending on what's going on, then you can have the wisdom to use that self-mastery in terms of identifying things that need to be not necessarily corrected, but you don't necessarily have to control. Control is people think of power as control in a lot of negative senses, and it's more than just control. Self-mastery is self-mastery of yourself and your intentions and what it is, how you want to express your life in a divine manner. And spiritual authority comes from that. It's like the example would be like when Jesus walked amongst us in his ministry. Um, he spoke his words, and his words were full of light, and people were just amazed at what he had to say because of his this insight in terms of God and how he spoke about God. But more than that, it was his presence that people will just went, oh, what is it? To one woman says, if I could just touch his cloak, I know I would be healed just because of the presence. And it's her belief that that would be so, because Christ radiated that higher energy of divine divinity that that people would actually not even hear the words he was saying, but just believe that if they just touched his cloak, they would be healed. And that comes from just presence, being presence, and the presence reveals spiritual authority. It doesn't have to say anything; it just is. And I guess I'm going to conclude in terms of only one power. That power being God, is that there's nothing else. There's nothing else that I need to identify with or relate to in terms of um, power. That I just know that ultimately God has the power, and I just have to remember to step aside and allow the power to dwell within me and work itself out. The only one power, only. It sounds exclusionary, but it's not really in terms of how it applies itself and how it becomes manifest in my life and how I think about power. Um, I don't have, you know, the expertise to wave my hands and make everything okay. I wish I could. Just hey, everything's okay. It's going to be all right. You know, I wish I had the ability to enfold the world, and give it a big hug and say, gosh, God loves you and he wants you to be happy. In fact, that's the 11th commandment. Thou shalt be happy. Remember that. Thou shalt be happy. It's hard to do, but it's worth the endeavor of trying to do that, whatever it is. Be happy with you. Sorry, be happy with yourself. Then you can be happy with others. You can share that joy with everybody else. You're being You're being the essence of God. God works through us in terms of our thoughts, words, and actions. I am expressing what God wants me to express because he wants us to express our divine identity at all times. If everybody did that, it would be a much better earthly experience for everybody concerned. I want to take that world, I want to give it a big hug. It's going to be okay. I want to abide in that warmth and goodness that is ours for the taking and for the asking. If we just allow, I love what I remember who's since passed, Maggie Yopes. Some of you remember her. She had a great saying. Said, "If you don't ask, you don't get." It's just that we have to have the wisdom and the discernment to know what to ask, and that's our work. So I would charge you to ask the right questions, not of yourself, not only of yourself, but also of the outcomes you wish to see in your world. So I honor the spirit of the living Christ within each and every one of you. And may this day show more revelation of that Christ identity and let you express that in all your affairs and everything you do. Thank you for listening. Thank you. We're going to do a meditation now. We're doing it for time. Yeah. And this is a meditation from Linda Martinell Winslet. I really like it. So I'm going to use measured words with it, or measured tempo. But I invite you to sit back in your chair or pew or wherever you're at and find a comfortable place within yourself. Close your eyes and focus on your breath. The um, power of your being, the power of dominion and mastery over your Christ identity. Through my breath, I sense the power of this present moment. I breathe intentionally, fully, a whole body breath, energizing my entire body. I breathe this way for several minutes until I sense the concentration of spiritual power in my throat chakra. The root of the tongue, or the throat chakra, is the seat of spiritual power. I bathe this area with the color of bright purple, a healing stream of light. I am the power of concentration, self-mastery, and spiritual authority. My source of power is divine power. By my divine nature, I cannot be powerless or ill. I am not in the world to cower in the presence of other powers. I release my hesitancy to shine the full light of spiritual awareness in the world. All power is mine in heaven and on earth, in spiritual as well as material aspects of life. By spiritual power, I concentrate on shining the light of love, life, wisdom, and all spiritual powers into my life and into the world. I am the master of my thoughts, words, and actions. I master myself, respect myself, and hold myself accountable by spiritual power. I am a presence in whose presence other people awaken to their divine identity. So it is. So I am. And so it shall be in this moment and forever and ever. Thank you. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you for this abundant world, this wonderful world, this marvelous world, this magical world, and everything and everyone in it. May your presence resonate in all. Only one power. Only one power. It is God. And so it is. Amen. Well, I feel better. I hope you do too. And we're going to do a couple of things here, I think. Right? We're going to do the prayer of protection. And I don't have my remote control. Jermaine, do you mind getting that remote control fob? It's over there with the piano somewhere. Yeah. Thank you. I got the latest version though. This is the latest greatest here, right here. Okay. And together, ready? The light of God surrounds us. We are the light. The love of God enfolds us. We are the love. The power of God protects us. We are the power. And the presence of God watches over us. We are the presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. We are one. And if we all stand and form a circle, we will sing our peace song. Oh, there. Thanks, Jermaine. Get up.